it may come as a surprise to many of you that every single beer in the world, no matter whether it's a wheat beer, a stout, a pale ale or a lager, has the same core ingredients. And there's only 4 ingredients in beer that you need to worry about. Water, malt, which is your brewing sugars, hops, and brewing yeast. Very important to have a high quality brewing yeast. That's it. So I'm going to demonstrate how easy it is, and even today when we're social distancing, I'm outside and I'm brewing, and it's pretty easy. So I've got to get some warm water. I've got the jug there. I'm going to boil that, and we're going to start putting the ingredients into the fermenter. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to prepare my hops. I'm making what we call the hop tea, and all I'm going to do is pour boiling water on top of those hops, and I'm going to let it steep for about 15 minutes before I put it into my brew. So the next part of the process is I'm going to start adding my malts to the fermenter. Now I do need some warm water to help dissolve these malts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour some hot water into the fermenter. One thing, always make sure your tap is off. That's a common mistake by brewers. And then we're going to add our malt. So this malt is effectively sugar, and it's a sugar that's derived from barley. Okay, and that is the core ingredient which makes the alcohol in the beer. It also gives the beer body and colour. Okay, so now that I've poured my malt into my fermenter, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pour this hop tea, which has been sitting there steeping for about 15 minutes. And I'm going to just pour it through a sieve, but an ordinary sieve is fine. But what you need to do is you must sanitize it. So I'm going to give it a quick sanitize. With this no rinse sanitizer, it just evaporates the oxygen, but it means that bugs won't reproduce and infect your beer. So I'm going to pour it over there. Here's my hop tea, and that goes in just like that. So that's the hops after I've drained it. It's blown up to about 5 times its size, but all the beautiful flavour has come out of that hop, and it's now in my fermenter and it's ready to brew. So the next ingredient I'm going to put in is 1 kilo, it's a malt blend. This will bring the beer up to full strength alcohol, so it'll be around about 5% alcohol once you've added your initial base malt plus the malt blend. So there's your kilo malt blend, and that's a dry malt, very high quality brewing malt. Then what I need to do is give it a good stir. I'm going to stir the wort, and once it starts fermenting, we're going to make our beer. So this beautiful mixture of hot water, malt and hops, this is all now completely dissolved. It's about 4 litres of water, and my next job is to add the cold water and bring it up to 21 litres. So I'm nearly at the finish of filling up my beer. So normally most brewers will say make 23 litres, which is around about 60 small bottles of beer. Now what we like to do pretty much with all of our recipes is cut it back a couple of litres of water, which down to about 21 litres, and you get more flavour and more body into the beer because we're all about the quality of the beer. So I'll just top it up to 21 litres. I've got a volume scale on this fermenter which tells me how much water to add, and then I'll give it a final stir. Now the brewing yeast, it's very important that you use a high quality brewing yeast. You can't use a normal bread making yeast, it just won't work. So in this case I have an American ale yeast, and this is going to produce a beer with clean, crisp flavours, and it will also get the best flavour out of the malt and the hops. And so the yeast is very simple. You just pour it on top like that. So at the moment what I've prepared is a wort, and I've poured the yeast in. That yeast will ferment with the sugars, will create alcohol and turn this wort into beer. So this is what the wort looks like after you've sprinkled the yeast. Now it might look like the yeast is sitting on top, but it will work all the way through and it cannot be stopped. This little critter is going to eat up all the sugars in there and more and create the alcohol. One of the crucial things in brewing is temperature and brewing it at the correct temperature. So it's very easy to keep an eye on temperature. We have a little stick-on thermometer like this. You put it on the side of the fermenter and it will read the current temperature, which is, at the moment is sitting around 22 to 24 degrees. So this is the final part of preparation for fermentation. We're going to put the lid on the fermenter, and we need it to be in a completely sealed environment. So here we have the lid. It's got a little hole here for the airlock, and I'll put that on. Just screw it on like that, very simple. Now the airlock, as you can see here, it's got water in it. What that is a one-way valve. So as the beer ferments, it creates not only alcohol, but it creates carbon dioxide. The pressure will build up in the fermenter and it will bubble through the airlock, not allowing any oxygen to get back in. So it's a one-way trap, very simple, works perfectly. And so within a day, we are going to see this airlock start bubbling and blooping away. Now that I've prepared my brew, it's ready to ferment. And the easy part about fermenting is you don't need to do anything. The yeast will do it all for you. All you have to do is make sure it's brewing at the right temperature. And what will happen is, as pressure builds up, this bubbles away. When it stops bubbling or the bubbling slows right down, it's time to test the beer. You use a little device like this, which is known as a hydrometer, and it measures what we call the sugar level, or the SG scale. So we get a sample in our test jar and we will float that hydrometer in the beer sample. When that level remains stable over 24 hours, it's ready to bottle. So now that I have my sample in the test tube, it's given me a reading, and this reading is the initial reading. So it's telling me that it's going to produce around about a 5% alcohol beer, because it's measuring the amount of sugar. Now at the end, the reading will be different, and that reading, once it's stable, as I said before, that is time to bottle. What I have in my hand is what we call carbonation drops, and effectively they are little measures of sugar, and this is designed to help assist with the secondary fermentation. So here in the fermenter, that's called primary fermentation. That's the first stage of fermentation to create your beer. But what you have at the end of that is flat beer. So what we need to do is bottle our beer. We'll bottle our beer, and we have to put the carbonation drops, or a measure of sugar, in each bottle. So effectively, there's your measure of sugar. At the end of the fermentation process, you will fill up each bottle, make sure the sugar's in there. You will close the cap, and what will happen is that yeast will continue to work, but it will work with the new sugar that you've put in there, and that will create pressure because it produces CO2, and within 3 weeks you've got fully carbonated beer. Now remember, it takes about a week to 10 days in the fermenter. 3 weeks minimum in the bottle is what we suggest, and then your beer is ready to drink. So within a month you're ready to drink your beer. But remember, beer has a best after date, so it will continue to improve with age. So after 3 months, you're going to have quite a different beer to you have after 3 weeks. But effectively, the beer does not go off. And that's the end of the brewing process. So here's one we made about 6 months ago. Or it's still got a nice bit of carbonation in there. And this is the reward for your work. It's a beautiful amber beer, this one. Oh, I can smell the malts and the hops. Cheers. Oh, outstanding.